Good morning, traders. This is a live trade recap. I took one trade this morning. I have it on video. We're going to go over it right now. If you'd like to download any of the tools you see me use during my trade, go to the YouTube Trading Armor homepage, click on the little Facebook icon, then you can become a member and click on files, and you'll be able to download the trade tracking spreadsheet, the 2-hour calculator, the trading plan, everything. All right, let's take a look at the trade. As always, I start with a Webull open on the markets pane. Click on top gainers, pre-market, select all, organized by volume. I'm only interested in the top 3 stocks, and right now LYL is number 1. That was the one I traded. It was also number 1 around 4 a.m. and MFNC was also on the list. CAN has too large of a float size for me to consider. And the other thing that I look at now is also just the number 1 top gainer also automatically goes on my list, which also happened to be LYL, so that's a good thing that it was the number 1 top gainer and number 1 by volume. All right, so let's take a look at the trade. So here you can see this is at 401, and LYL was number 2 at that moment. I think it moves up to, no, I guess it didn't move up to number 1. Yeah, it did, right before I got into the trade, or on the watch list at least. Okay, so here I'm marking out the high of the previous session, and you can see that it's also trading above the previous day's high. So that meets my criteria now to look for an entry if and only if the price is trading above that level. So right now it's not, so it needs to break out above that level, and then on the first pullback I can get in for a trade. And the same thing here on MFNC. I'm marking out the high, and it needs to come over that high for me to look for an entry. So you can see here was a reversal play, but I don't trade those because they are not consistent enough, and it's only once the price breaks out through the previous high that I'm convinced there is potentially enough buying power to make a successful 2-hour trade after a pullback. So that's what we're looking for now. But all of this is part of an ABCD pattern, like I guess you could call this point A over here. So I was just putting out my stop loss line. That's not the level that it's going to be at, but I just threw the line on the chart just so when I do get into the trade, all I have to do is drag that to where my stop loss is going to be. This is the pre-market. You can't have actual stop losses out. You have to stop out manually. That's one of the reasons I use hotkeys. Okay, so now all I'm waiting for, so obviously the pullback has started. This was the first pullback candle, and this is the first candle that I possibly could have entered on if it broke out above this one. It did not. So now we've got this one that's already finished forming with a high of 206. So if this candle hits 207, I can get in. And again, see, I'm triggering with my hotkeys because if I try to use this and put out a limit order, let's say I type in 207 and click buy, it's going to fill me at 205 or 206 or wherever, and this thing may not actually give me that confirmation that I want of 207, and I'm already in the trade. You know, like for example, I said back here I could have entered on this candle assuming that it broke that 209 level. Well, I would have already been sitting in the trade with a higher than desired average, waiting for it to break out. So that's why I don't use the trade widget and a limit order. I have to use my hotkeys, and as soon as I see that confirmation that I want that the pullback is over, meaning that a 1-minute candle makes a new high, I hit my hotkeys to buy the ask, which is a limit order set at the ask price. So you're going to see that in just a second. So watch the bubble over here. It's 206 right now. I was dragging up my stop when it went to 207. There it goes to 207, and so it took me just this kind of a half second or so to trigger my hotkeys because I was playing with that stop loss line. But I got in as soon as I saw this. This indicates that I hit my hotkeys, which takes a second, well, less than a second to fill. And you can see the spread is 2 cents. The ask is 208. So based on that, I should get filled at 208. And I do. So that's not slippage. That is where the sellers are at. So even though the price is at 207, that's the last price that a trade took place at. That doesn't mean that's where you're going to get filled at. If you put in an order, a limit order at that moment at 207, you would not get filled. The ask would have to come back down to 207. So that's another reason why I use the hotkeys set to ask. If you don't get filled on a trade, the trade is worthless. So, sometimes you might say, okay, I want 207 because that's where the price is. You put your limit order at 207. You don't get filled because the ask is at 208 and the price continues all the way to your target, never comes back down to that 207 level. And here you are sitting on your hands and missed a great trade. So the trade is worthless if you can't get filled. So sometimes it's worth taking. This is not slippage, but I'm just making a point about sometimes you take some slippage, and I will show you on my spreadsheet how little slippage that I take on average, and when we get to the end of this trade. All right, so here I'm using my 2R calculator to figure out my profit target. Now I don't know if you guys caught it. I didn't catch it right away, but I made a mistake here based off of the way I had my hotkeys set, because I'm doing some test trading at 7 a.m. And when I do test trading, I only trade with one share. And yesterday I started to look for stuff to trade at 7, and it looked like there was nothing, and I forgot to switch my hotkeys back to trading my full position size, which is 10% of my account. So that's why right now I only have one share, but all hope is not lost, and just hang out for a second. But I didn't realize it at this point. But you can see I put in my 2R calculator, so I got the profit target at 226. Stop loss is 199, which is 1 cent below the previous candle that I entered on. The risk is slightly low at 4.33%. 5 or 6% is my average for risk. All right, so it took me a while to realize that I only had one share of this thing. I'll show you exactly when that happened. I was just focused on getting my lines out for my profit target. Okay, so now this thing is starting to break out over my entry. You can see I'm putting in my profit target order with the trade widget, 226, quantity 100%. So to sell all my shares. Then I place the order, and this is about the time where I said, wait a minute, why does it say sell one? I want to sell all my shares. And I realized I only had one share. And man, I was pretty pissed, I have to say, because this looked like a great setup. And I figured, this month has been really terrible for trading. And I figured, well, this is going to be the one that goes to my profit target. And here I am with one share. This is really going to suck. But one thing, so yeah, here's where I changed my hotkeys back to 10% of my buying power. So I got pretty lucky here, because watch what happens. This thing comes right back down to where my position is, and so I trigger my hotkeys to get in again. I could have put a buy limit order at 208 for the 32 shares, or $69 worth, but this thing was moving pretty fast, and it's very likely that I would have missed that opportunity. So as soon as I saw it come back down to my entry level, I hit my hotkeys, and I got filled 1 cent higher than my original position, so not too bad. And I just decided to leave my profit target exactly where it was. Of course, I deleted this to get the 100% of the shares out of there, but I have to wait, of course, until this little pullback is done. Okay, so as soon as I see it come back over my entry, I get ready to put out my profit target order. And I just leave it at 226, so it's slightly less than 2R because of now my position moved up to 209, but it was supposed to be 208. And since that was my mistake, it wasn't, any slippage on the way in or anything. That was totally my mistake. I just left it where it is. I didn't want to mess with the odds. Okay, I'm fast forwarding, so you're not seeing it quite in real time, but now I'm just going to let it play. You see, I want you to see kind of how it hesitates up here, and think about if you were in the trade. Look, right now it's at 226. It still hasn't filled me. That's because the bid has to come up to 226 in order for it to fill me. So imagine yourself in this trade. You're down this month. Would you pull this down, try to get filled, or would you be strong and hold and continue to hold to your target? Look, it's coming down against you now. It's 225. You might get stopped out by 1 cent. These are the things that go through your mind. Not me, because I'm done with that, but that's the way I thought months ago. So you can see I just kept it at 226 and I got filled. Not to say that was guaranteed to happen. It could have easily come back down and stopped me out, but I'm tired of messing around. I'm tired of scaling out. I'm tired of weekending stocks. I just either hold to my profit target or stop out at my 1 hour loss. So that was a good successful 2 hour trade, other than my entry mistake, but it didn't make much of a difference, and I'll show you exactly the result. So I made 560. If I would have gotten in with the original 32 shares, is what it would have been at the desired price of 208, it would have been 576. So very small difference there, and a lesson learned for sure. So let's take a look. We'll look at it on Webull. So you can see that was my only order today. There's that 1 share, and then when I placed the order for the other 32 shares, so 560 on that trade. I think we're still red on the week a little bit, and definitely still red on the month. It's only the second day of the week, but not by much. We can wipe that out with 1 green trade. And this month has been really rough. So we're still down 31 bucks, but I've been trading my plan perfectly, and other than a couple small errors, been trading very well. So it's just a matter of the ebb and flow of the market, and things need to kind of just swing back in my favor as they did today. Hopefully that trend continues, and we can get back in the green pretty quick if things continue in our favor. You can see here on the first trade, even the first trade that I take of the day, even with all of this red here, now I'm only down 752 on that first trade. So I could get break even on that with 1 trade and back in the green with 2 trades. If I get 2 in a row, of course, which we don't know if that's going to happen. And the second trade so far is all red, so that's going to take a while to recover from. This third trade is green, even though it's slightly green. So overall, things are looking pretty good. You can see now I'm tracking not just the session that I trade in, but if the stock was the number 1 on volume, 2 or 3, and if it was the top gainer, and sometimes it's both. And that'll give me a little bit more data at the end of the month. This is something else that I'm tracking just starting today, which may not mean anything, but I won't know until I track it for a while. I'm looking at the volume at exactly 401 and seeing what the number 1 volume stock had at 401 and seeing how that correlates with a green or red day. And it may not mean anything because of 401, everybody's just getting going. But if I get, say, maybe 100 of these recorded, and I can make a calculation that, say, like 99% of the time I end up red if the volume is under 10,000, there may be something there, and it could be enough for me to say, well, if there's not 10,000 shares or more by 401, then I don't look for a trade. So that's the idea, and we'll see what happens with that. So anyway, let me know if you have any questions about this trade or any others. As always, I like to remind you to always take your stop losses no matter what, and honor your profit targets, and in the long run, you should be green. Take care.